there was that sort of let down feeling, and then at the end of it all kind of avalanche. I think whoever the new administration is, and as far as the coaching staff goes, they're probably going to have pre-existing ideas about what they want to do, how Jalen may or may not fit. But experience comes in a lot of different ways. And so, if you hire an assistant this time, I would expect probably you hire an assistant that's been on a deep playoff run. The one thing that I know is that the coach is going to come in and say, all right, I don't want to mess with too much defensively.
This magic moment.
Now, this magic moment.
Three-point shot. Back in. The bank open.
Orlando rises.
Bane hoisting at the buzzer. He drills it.
Legends live.
It's a crack down.
And the magic is real.
He's going to go for the win. Shot is up, and he got it.
Strap in. It's showtime with RJ Saunders.
It is this magic moment here on 1010XL Magic. RJ Saunders here with you as always. We do appreciate you guys being here with us. We continue the 1010XL Magic exit interviews here on the channel, and our next guest had probably some of the greatest calls for the Orlando Magic this season, and we always love getting his insight here on the program. He is none other than one Jake Chapman. Jake, appreciate the time as always, sir, man. How are you?
I'm good, RJ. How are you?
Good. And as always, we do appreciate the time and really want to ask the hard-hitting questions to you during this exit interview. Number one, will you be making the pilgrimage to Jacksonville to watch the Cleveland Browns, your Cleveland Browns, take on the Jags in week 1?
Now, let me double check too, because I'm pretty sure week 2, they're in Tampa.
Yes.
So, and this is obviously, my schedule usually right by week 4 of the NFL season, I'm in the throes of NBA season. We're getting ready to go. So this is a rare opportunity, RJ. I may be able to attend both of those games. And the one time, this is years ago, that I went to a home game in Jacksonville, Jags were not very good. This is like pre-Bortles even probably. It was almost a home game. There are so many Ohioans and Browns fans that live in Florida that will be there at that game. So I think there's a good chance that I may make it up there. I'm not sure if it'll be my daughter's first Browns game. She's 3 years old. We'll have to gauge throughout the summer if she's ready for that yet. But I do. I think I'll be rocking my brown and orange come week 1. That'll be a whole lot of fun. Maybe we'll link up.
Yeah, absolutely. By any chance, have you been able to look at the Cleveland Browns schedule? I mean, do you kind of have a record in your head as to what you think the Browns will do this season?
Yeah, you want to play that game?
No.
Well, look, we have the easiest strength of schedule for whatever that means in May, right? But because we were bad last year, we matched up with the worst finishing teams in other divisions, et cetera, et cetera. I just think I think we're sort of designed to suck again, to be honest with you. Look, chances are Deshaun Watson will be our starting quarterback. Chances are Shedeur will get another crack at it. And I think they're sort of sizing up to try to be at the top of the draft next year and grab the quarterback. I don't know exactly what they think about Shedeur. He had some highs, he had some lows. He was always going to be a long projection. That's why he dropped to the 5th round, because he just didn't have a ton of experience running an NFL type offense. So I'm anxious to see him get an opportunity, but my guess is that, by week 7 or 8, we're already looking towards the QB crop and figuring out who's next. So I will say 4 or 5 wins.
Oh, man. And that's with the scariest man in all the NFL and Myles Garrett. I mean, my goodness.
We're not sure exactly how long he will be wearing brown and orange. We'll see how that pans out as well.
Nah, but Myles Garrett is certainly a dog there with the Cleveland Browns. All right, let's get really now to the Orlando Magic, kind of give an overview on the season. Before we do get to that, I know that David Steele had talked about just the local media in terms of being able to cover the games. I know the TV crew wasn't able to do so, but you were. It seemed like Mike Breen kind of started the fire where he said, listen, I feel like the local affiliate should be able to at least cover the first round of games, and they weren't able to do so, in these playoffs this postseason. You were able to do so. I loved it. Anybody who was listening on 1010XL, the radio broadcast, was absolutely just pleased by your calls and your insight on the team. Just for you, just kind of the importance, in your opinion, of just being able to have the local affiliate be able to kind of give you the color and the artistry and the overall feel of the Orlando Magic heading into postseason play?
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. Now, especially as you mentioned, it's a responsibility that I do not take lightly, to be the only local voice broadcasting postseason games. It's not, as you mentioned, it's only ever been, or at least for for the last few decades, the first round that the local television affiliates were typically able still to cover. And then once you got past the first round, they were going to be national television broadcasts anyways. Radio has always been able to call everything. And so that's something pretty special about radio, or sort of second fiddle, across the board, but it's one of those sort of unique responsibilities and opportunities. Well, I got to be careful, because the bottom line is money talks, and there's a lot of money being spent on those opportunities. And we appreciate our national partners so much. And especially when you start talking about the people, it's easy to say Amazon and Peacock and ESPN are just these big entities. But I work with a lot of those folks and a lot of those broadcasters. And boy, I don't know about you, but I could listen to Noah Eagle call a game all day long. I mean, he is a stud. And so it's and Jamal Crawford and some of these other new voices in the studio shows that Amazon are doing, I think, are fantastic. So there's good and bad in all of it. And certainly when somebody like Mike or somebody like David speaks, you listen, and those guys have the right to register that complaint. So it's something that I think in today's day and age, especially with streamers, is we're going to have to figure out new ways to have local coverage that goes beyond just play by play. And for the time being, I will take that responsibility proudly and hopefully be able to speak to the Magic fan. But I think sooner than later, we'll have different avenues for everybody to feel like they're getting the local touch as well.
Nah, Jake, you did an absolutely great job. And, I kind of hate bringing up old wounds, even though it still feels like it's very fresh. You were there in Detroit for the Game 7. I'm at home with a towel over my head as the clock is winding down, understanding that the season is over. But for you, kind of being in the building, what's your emotion like? Is it, hey, we had a great season, it didn't end the way that we wanted to, or is it, man, if we just would have closed it out in Game 6, we wouldn't be in this situation? Just kind of what are your feelings and your vibe being in the building, understanding that the Magic season is winding down?
Yeah, there was a lot going on there. I worked for the Pistons for a couple of years as well. I was in Detroit when Little Caesars Arena opened. That was during the Stan Van Gundy era. But the one year that they made the playoffs under Stan was still at the Palace. So that building had not experienced high-level Pistons basketball at all, save for a couple games in the first round last year against Detroit or against New York. And so there was all of that, was registering to me at the very least at the beginning of the series. Like, wow, this is really special. Pistons fans really deserve this. Detroit's such a great sports town. But I could also feel, especially after we stole Game 1, they were really nervous, and all of the conversations about Duran and all of that stuff going on. So Game 7, you can't help but sort of feel the Detroit part of it. And especially for me, like, I felt it, I think, a little bit more than your standard visiting broadcaster would have. So it was all of that. There was the background of what happened in Game 6 in the second half that sort of lorded over the entire experience. After that, the next day we got on the plane. Yeah, we got to wipe it. Here comes Game 7. Still have an opportunity. If I had told you before the series, 8-1, we got 48 minutes to try to get it done. You're trying to change your perspective in that, but it's so hard to recover from that. And I will say, like, it's not like a tank. Like, it came out and we fought in Game 1. We didn't get blown out of the water in the first quarter of Game 7. But bottom line was there was that sort of let down feeling, and then at the end of it all kind of avalanched. You're let down from the end of the series, you're let down from the end of the season, and then, to be honest with you, RJ, there's always that thing in the back of your mind that's like, all right, I get to go home and be with my daughter. All right, like it's summertime, and so that's you're not at all happy about it. But at the very least, you sort of have like an exhale because it's over, and at the very least, you're going to be able to rest your mind and body a little bit.
Have you thought about it enough to where you can kind of put your finger on what necessarily went wrong, yet you still game one? I'm thinking you can still game two. Detroit has that, that magical run there. You're up 24 in game six. I mean, you can't hit a beach ball in the ocean in the second half, and Detroit walks you down, ultimately wins that. They ultimately win game seven in the series. But what do you think kind of went wrong for the Magic, who were experiencing the highest of highs with, a 3-1 series lead, and it kind of all just evaporating in the matter of moments?
Yeah, it's right. You say walk you down. Detroit can kind of run you down, right? Like they just like that can just sort of ratchet up the defense, and all of a sudden, especially with us, because sometimes when our offense goes sideways, it goes really sideways. And so the Pistons, we couldn't complete passes, and we had stretches of basketball like that. You go back to game two, that third quarter, it was sort of similar. It's just, I love the expression, the Cavalanche. The way the Cavs do it is with their offense. Right. Whatever the counterpart is at with their defense is what the Pistons do. And there were times where Asar Thompson was just too much. I thought Tobias was so great in games 5, 6, and 7. Yeah. He was just really huge, and he was in the middle of all of those stretches. And then obviously Cade was Cade. Once we stopped turning Cade over, which is what happened when Franz got injured, we really had to be perfect sort of across the board. We had to really win those upfront battles that we won in the early part of the series. Wendell finished, not as strongly as he started as far as that series went. The and it's not fair to put it all on Wendell. Goga was out of the rotation by the end of the front line kind of wore down a little bit. And I think you sort of expected that to happen, but we really needed that to stay perfect. You needed to make more shots. You couldn't have those spats turning the ball over. And it all kind of came to a head in about a 10-minute span of basketball in the second half of game 6, where it was just so bad. And to do that at home and up 24, and especially now you're thinking about, Paolo went through this 2 years ago in game 7 in Cleveland, where we were up by 18 in the first half of a potential closeout game. So all of that stuff kind of crept in, I think. And unfortunately, offensively, we're still a team that doesn't have much margin of error. And so if you have a turnover issue, or you're not getting any offensive rebounds, you're just not getting those sort of junk manufacture points, it can look really, really bad. And that's what happened.
And then we will get to Franz Wagner and also the roster here in just a moment, but the league MVP is going to be announced soon. But when it comes to the Orlando Magic for you, Jake, who was the Orlando Magic most valuable player this season?
There's only two choices, and I'll go Dez because he played 82 games. Bane and Banchero are your two choices, and Paolo, I think certainly second half of the season, coming out of the All-Star break, what he does every year in the playoffs, he is your MVP. And so it's probably unfair. If you throw the postseason in there, then Paolo, then it may go 51-49 Paolo, but regular season, playing all 82, carrying us through, and especially sort of establishing himself early on and getting that stuff out of the way, I'll go with Desmond Bane. I think Dez won us a handful of games, but the highs and lows of this season, to be able to look down at the backcourt every single night and say, we're going to have number 3 in there, and he's going to be number 3 every night. You can't put a price tag on that.
Now, when it comes to Dez and it comes to Paolo being your two marquee guys and possibly being in the running for team MVP, like you said, when it comes to next year, just who's a guy on this team that you think needs to have a big year for Orlando to be successful outside of, the main core? We saw AB really have a huge season this year, even before going down with the injury. Thought that maybe he would be in the mix had he stayed healthy, probably be in the mix for most improved. We saw stretches from Tristan da Silva as well as others. But for you, when you look at this roster and potentially who's coming back, who do you think needs to have a big year for Orlando to take the next step?
Yeah, I think Anthony Black's the obvious answer. He grew so much this year, and integral to whoever the new coach is. I think no matter what, you know the conversation that Jamal started and that the coaching staff was getting at the beginning of the year, which sort of got hijacked by the media. But the conversation about the pace that our team needs to play with, kind of capitalizing on our defensive acumen and generating offense against unset defenses. I think that's going to remain no matter what. And I think Anthony Black is such a huge piece to that. Much of the season, he was a top 10 player in transition points. He is so good in the open floor, but then also defensively, that's where his specialty lies as well, is cheating, sort of using that athleticism to close gaps, to lure you into to trying to make that bounce pass, and then all of a sudden he's got those rangy arms, sliding in there like a claw. And forcing turnovers and then getting out and going. So I think AB is going to be a big part of what we're doing moving forward, almost as a six man. It might as well be a starter. He's going to be the guy that fills in whenever anybody's out, and he's able to guard and play multiple positions. And what AB needs to do in order to take that next step is just be a little bit more consistent. You can't have those high turnover games. Try to get the 3-point percentage up a little bit, and obviously stay healthy. So there's that. And then I think it's, if you want to talk about a little bit closer in with the core, can you keep Jalen healthy? Can Jalen's percentages between Jalen and AB, they both do a lot of the same things. We need them both to defend. We need them both to generate turnovers. We need them both to hit open shots within the half court. They have capabilities, both of them, of being playmaking, like really, really involved in the offense type guys. But if we have a healthy Paolo, Franz, and Dez, they need to be sort of fill in the cracks type of guys. And so that means knocking down those feet set open threes when you get them. And both those guys, if both those guys shoot better than 35% from 3-point range, for instance, we're going to be cooking with gas. That is exactly what this team needs, I think, to take the next step offensively.
I was going to try to leave Jalen Suggs alone, especially with you, that there's just this hullabaloo that's going around that, maybe potentially Jeff Weltman might be shopping around the Orlando Magic point guard. And I understand there are those who believe that, listen, he's not a traditional point guard, but he's the heart and soul of the team. And so, but if you can, quote unquote, get something for him that can help the team get to, where they would ultimately want to get to, you may have to, kill your darlings, as the famous quote goes. For you, what's your take on now this whole just kind of divide between whether Jalen Suggs should stay or whether, the Magic should use him as kind of trade bait to acquire assets?
Yeah, I think, look, anytime a team comes in under expectations, these conversations are going to happen. And also anytime a team has a young core like we do, that's got extensions and raises coming due, then you're going to start to look at movable contracts. If you feel like moves need to be made. And I don't know that that's the case at all, because you're going to get a new coach. And so, I think whoever the new administration is, and as far as the coaching staff goes, they're probably going to have pre-existing ideas about what they want to do, how Jalen may or may not fit. So I think all of that stuff is on hold for now. I think, look, the bottom line is, as you mentioned, like Jalen's role on this team is so very clearly defined.
Yes.
We're just so much better when he's on the floor. Defensively, he's such an important part of the DNA of this thing. And as I mentioned before about kind of playing with pace, like the one thing that I know is that the coach is going to come in and say, all right, I don't want to mess with too much defensively, right? Like, yeah, you guys took a step back last year, but the bones are still here of a not just good, great DNA, the DNA of a great defensive team. And so I think no matter what, that's going to be part of it. And so I think that box is already checked. So, look, those trade conversations are going to happen. I happen to think it might be a really, really crazy busy summer. Typically, whenever you have big changes like what we've been dealing with the last couple of years with the new CBA, and you got the aprons and you got all these different things kind of at play, and now all of a sudden we've got new tanking rules that we're supposed to be thinking about coming off a few years down the road. Typically, those are the pieces for crazy summers. We're all LeBron James might be wearing a new uniform next year, and so you start to move big pieces of the puzzle like that, and then all kinds of stuff can start to happen. So I happen to think it's going to be, especially with the draft too, like a seismic shift type of summer. So we'll see. We are in a very interesting situation right now where we have a very young team, a lot of pieces that I think are coveted, but we also have that sort of luxury where it's like you got a new coach coming in and you have the pieces here that we know can contend or at the very least compete with some of the best in the league. See what just happened, taking Detroit to 7 in round 1. And so I don't know. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot going on, but I have absolutely no idea how involved we're going to be in all of it.
Now, you were told that German basketball is sexy. The allure was taken from us in the first round when Franz Wagner is sidelined due to injury. And I mean, he really tried hard to come back, Jake. And you had told me, there was absolutely no way that anybody in that organization was going to tell him, hey, sit out, next year, you'll be 100% fully healthy. We'll be ready to go. There are a few individuals that say, if Franz were healthy, we'd be in the second round right now. Dante Marchitelli came on this show this week, and he said that if Franz Wagner were healthy, we may be talking about the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals. For you, just how much does Franz Wagner change just the overall outlook of this team?
Oh, man. I mean, you saw it. Like, you were up 3-1. And he was defending Cade and a lot and boy, it looked to me like as the regular season was winding up, and especially that Philly game, and remember he knocked knees at the end of the Philly game with Wendell, and he just wasn't playing very well, and you're still trying to inch his minutes up. And then the Charlotte game, obviously, but boy, the first couple of games of the Detroit series, he was Franz, and obviously he alleviates a ton of pressure on Paolo offensively, but defensively, it's just, he's the final piece to the puzzle. And now you got 6'10" switchables for 3 or 4 positions. And, hedgehogs like Jalen Suggs flying around wrecking sets. And so that's the vision. This is, and I'm not going to talk about anybody who slid in for Franz, but this is the era of picking on the weakest link and pigeon hunting. And every time you lose a Franz, somebody slides in and it's a better matchup for the Detroit Pistons. And that's the bottom line. And so that made a huge difference. Cade turned the ball over an average of 8 times a game for 3 consecutive games. And so, I mean, that's the proof was in the pudding there. They were unable to get into their stuff when we had our defense peaking and Franz in the middle of all of it. So I agree with D. I think we would have had a real chance in this round as well. We played Cleveland well. The things that Detroit have been able to do, I think we would have been able to do to the Cavs. And I think our size advantage across the starting 5 and into the bench would have played a role. But look, Cavs have figured something out as well. So that would have been a whole lot of fun. And for me, my team playing Detroit and Cleveland in rounds, the team that I used to work for and the team that I grew up cheering for, that would have been off the hook. So, it is. You feel like that injury costs you a real opportunity, and then you just see how quickly things can change in this league. It was just like that, and all of a sudden, we're looking at a new coach.
Now, 3 more for you just before I'd let you go. And thanks as always for giving us a couple moments, Jake. Really appreciate you. I mean, doing this with us all the time. Number 1, just your takeaways from Jeff Weltman's exit interview. It seems that he understands a lot needs to be done. Really feels like he wants to get it done, just because, in my opinion, I think he understands that this is going to be a big summer for the Orlando Magic if they want to place themselves in that top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference that are vying for an Eastern Conference final spot and maybe even representing the East in the NBA Finals come next year.
Yeah, it's, based on the things Jeff said, and obviously, moving on from Jamal, like you're not going to find a better man, but he's a pretty damn good coach too. And he was able to sort of plant the seeds and build a lot of this. And now, I think the idea is you want to get to the next level. You want to be able to raise the bar. You want to, first and foremost, you got to keep the group healthy, and that was something that I think is sort of frustrating. And I'm sure Jamal rues a little bit when he thinks about some of those missed opportunities. And so you got to get that squared away, and maybe that does mean changes, or maybe that means trying to figure out a way for this group to be a little bit more durable long term. But I think when you bring in that new voice, you want to figure out a way to ease things offensively, no matter what. That's what needs. When I talk about raising the bar, you want to be a team that has more easy buttons offensively. You want to get it doesn't. You don't want to have to work so hard and put so much of an onus on Paolo Banchero to create. And so maybe you can do that with different stuff, running different stuff within the half court. Maybe you can do that just with sharpening and sort of having a fresh voice and kind of getting back to basics a little bit. But I think no matter what, and then on the personnel front, I think the goal is the same. I think we know that this team can defend well enough to advance deep into the postseason. I think still you're looking for a way to open things up offensively a little bit, to raise the ceiling offensively a little bit, to get more out of your primary players. All the conversations about Paolo are valid, about the efficiency, about the long twos, about and all of that, but it's not all on Paolo to fix that. And so I think moving forward, whether or not it's personnel changes, role changes, or scheme changes, you need to make sure that you figure out a way to ease the burden on Paolo and not make him, take inefficient shots. You want to get him in his spots, and you want to get him at his best. And I think that needs to be a holistic effort.
Now, when it comes to a coach, and I mean, you touched on it, just perfectly with, Jamal Mosley, great man, damn good coach. And he certainly set the foundation, especially defensively, for this team to have that kind of identity. Where should the Magic look? Should it be an offensive mind, an established coach that, is kind of sitting on the sidelines right now, waiting for an opportunity? Should it be kind of a young assistant or an assistant coach, just period, that you take a chance on, maybe a former player? Or do you kind of go the college route? It seems like, they're talking about a couple of college guys, maybe getting a call from the Orlando Magic just to engage the interest as to what they would like to do in terms of being the head coach of the team. But should it be a more offensive mind, or stick with the identity, get another defensive mind, and go from there? Have you had a chance to really think about that?
Yeah, trust me, I've thought about it plenty. Nobody really has asked my opinion, unfortunately, but there are so many very, very smart people thinking about this. And I think what you just laid out, a lot of the sort of archetypes. I'm not sure. I think there are strengths for everything, for every one of those types. I think probably, you want to make sure that you have somebody who isn't going to be so inexperienced that all of this feels too big for him, right? Now, does that mean necessarily that it's a first time a retread, or a guy who's not on their first gig? Not necessarily. I think, there's going to be the surface level reaction. You got rid of Jamal, and he was in his first opportunity for another guy's first opportunity. But experience comes in a lot of different ways. And so, if you hire an assistant this time, I would expect probably you hire an assistant that's been on a deep playoff run, more likely than not, and has played a big role in a deep playoff run. I don't think you'll pull somebody off the end of the bench or off the end of the front of a bench for a team that hasn't won. But I think you could still talk yourself into that. I don't think that's necessarily a prerequisite. Somebody who's had a head job before. The college thing is definitely interesting because we've got a young roster. You always want to make sure you have people who can connect with young people. But the college game is looking more and more like the NBA game these days. And so you're not talking about trying to put Dean Smith's, four corners offense into the NBA. These guys are running a lot of the same stuff. And so, I don't think if you went and grabbed, whoever, one of these kind of new up and comer type guys, that it'll be like I said before, that they'll walk in and the lights will be too bright, and they'll have no idea what they're doing. Those worlds are very much interconnected these days. And then you throw in agents and how tight knit everything is. Everybody knows each other. Everybody knows what everybody's about. So It's interesting. It's an interesting time. Frustrated, obviously, that it didn't work out with Coach Mosley. Have a feeling that man's going to land on his feet.
Yes.
And we're gonna have to deal with him in the coming years. But look, you understand how it goes. It's the NBA. These guys get hired to get fired. It sucks. But we'll see. I think a new voice is going to be really interesting because it's a very important time for the organization. Just when you talk about kind of the timeline, the young talent that you have in place, and you want to make sure you capitalize on where we are right now.
Last one for you before we do let you go. Do you have a message for the Orlando Magic fans, Jake? It seems like they really need hope. You know, the season didn't end like they wanted to. And, you know, it seems like when you look on Magic Twitter or you hear from Magic fans, it feels like, you know, they're just uncertain that this thing is really going to figure it.
No, don't do that.
No, you're right. Don't do that. I'm really looking at this and I'm saying, listen, I think that we really have so much of the field kind of ahead of us. But for you, I mean, can you give just a message to the Orlando Magic fan that may be kind of, you know, weary just a little bit, or to the fan that's saying, listen, I need someone like a Jake Chapman to help me really keep the Orlando Magic faithful on their high horse because we're going to figure this out.
No, dude, I get it. It was a really frustrating season partly because of expectations, partly because it was like one step forward, two steps back, like all year long. It felt like it never, and actually it was really 2 years now. If you go back to the obliques last year, it just feels like injuries and then some, you know, at times uninspired play, at times just poor shooting, like all these really frustrating things to watch have torpedoed at their own times the season the last 2 years. You know, I would remind people that the reason this is all frustrating is because there's expectations in the first place. And so, you know, you could be a team that's just sort of floating along and every year, you know, this is the most exciting time of year because we get to watch the lottery balls and then you end up sixth and it's like, oh, we've been there. So we don't want to be back there where we're just hoping to hit one of these picks. We've hit several of these picks. We've got a really good young core in place. And now it's just a matter of kind of putting the finishing touches, I think, and letting this group flourish together. Or maybe, you know, making one move and a tweak here or there. But, you know, you've got some pretty good bones in place, I think, in order for this thing to really take off. So, got to stay patient. I understand it was a long, frustrating year. Changes have been made and are being made. But the bottom line is, I think, you know, we all know that healthy Paolo, Franz, Jalen, AB, Wendell, Dez is something. It's something pretty cool that we want to watch develop. And so, you know, we got a long summer in front of us here where the conversations are going to get even weirder and further into left field. And that's just the way it is. I would say spend the next couple of weeks being constructive and scouting second round draft picks. Get excited about somebody at 46. Because that's a good way to waste time in the summertime rather than arguing about whose fault it was. It's over. Let's move on.
Jake, I'm sad, man, because, you know, this is going to be our last time talking kind of on like this platform for a minute. But, you know, want to allow you to enjoy your vacation, enjoy your time off. You did an incredible job this year. Can't wait to hear you again here in Jacksonville on 1010XL when we pick up the Magic games at the start of next season. But thank you once again, Jake. I mean, just for taking out the time. You, Dante, Jeff Turner, Coach Brian Hill, all of you guys have been so good to us. We can't thank you guys enough. So thank you. Enjoy your vacation, man, and we'll talk soon.
You bet. Thank you, RJ. Do a fantastic job. The reason we all love jumping on with you is because of how good a job you do. You study up, you know the team, and we always have fun jumping on with you, and certainly appreciate everybody in Jacksonville. Keep the faith, everybody. We will be back at the end of the summer, and RJ, if you ever want to chat, hit me up.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.